The Indiana State Fair stage collapse is all because of a gust front. Once again, a gust front forms from that warm, moist air being forced up. We get that counteracting, or that essentially that opposite direction downdraft of cold air. So once again, in this particular image here, we got frontal lifting, and so we have very cold air on one side, very warm, moist air on the other. That's essentially the ingredients, so the recipe for very, very, very strong and powerful storms, as we saw in the case of the State Fair stage collapse. So we hear 8:53. This is about the time when the stage collapsed. We have stark contrast between temperatures, and this is only what 15, 20 miles apart, maybe from each other. Eagle Creek Park and over here, the location of the state fair. So we have what 15, 20 miles separated by 20 degrees of difference in terms of temperature. 84 degrees where the state fair is, 64 degrees over here at the Eagle Creek Airport. So we go back, huge contrast. And so definitely the ingredients for a very, very bad storm. So let's take a look at this. This is infrared, IR. Infrared, once again, we're going to be temperature. So this is active remote sensing map. Obviously a time lapse, which it's accelerated. This is not how fast the storm comes through. But what we see is definitely a low pressure. I mean, let's just start off, what do we see? We see a low pressure, that low pressure center right there. See how we got that low pressure center? And we have that cold front. And why I really want to emphasize this is we think about this tragedy. Hopefully it's enough in our past where we can talk frank about it. But the people who organized it, they really messed up. This cold front, this storm that created the gust front, which knocked down the stage, it was going to happen. It was nothing that was going to stop it. It wasn't going to maybe fizzle out. It was already clearly identified way back up here in northern Illinois. And if you really get down to it, it started forming up here in Iowa. You can see it right there. Look at that. Right there. And then it forms again and it really intensifies. Once again, this is accelerated. So the organizers or whoever put on the show, they had a huge awareness of what was going on. They knew this storm was coming. Let's take a look at now at the Doppler radar. You can see in terms of radar, the intensity of the storms, very intense. And if I go back to the infrared, that red really shows temperature. Those are the hottest temperatures. This is Celsius, or I don't know what it is, but this is very, 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 very hot right through here. And so we get this warm, moist air being kind of forced up this direction, and boom, that cold air comes, and we have that stark contrast, which I just showed right here. So looking at the Doppler radar, we can see the formation of that front that formed way out in front, way out in northern Illinois. And we zoom in to Indianapolis, in Indiana, we can see that gust front. Where do we see it? That gust front right there. We can see that line. And so that line forms, essentially what happens is, if we go back to this, the downdraft, and so the downdraft comes down and actually ends up going up again as it comes across more warm, moist air. And so this downdraft, if it gets ahead enough of the actual front, will actually create another situation of a line of moisture or storms that are actually visible on a map. And so that line that we see coming out of the cold front is essentially the gust front. Boom, we see it right there. So essentially, we think about this is important. Another key a part of this tragedy was the fact that the gust front formed essentially over central Indiana. So the gust front really fooled people. And that's something I'm going to showcase here in a minute. So let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit more, see if we can see that gust front. So like I said, the gust front came out of the cold front and came out of and essentially started going and moving and running ahead of the cold front. And we can see a little bit of that visible on this particular radar map. There is the red being the location of the state fair. So we zoom in, once again, the location of the state fair, 8:12 p.m. So still, about 20 to 30 minutes before the stage collapse. So here we get sooner. We can see the gust front starting to form. This is right over central Indiana, Brownsburg, Carmel. So 8:21 p.m. As it gets closer, we can really see that gust front form and continue to develop ahead of the cold front. So the cold front way back here, the intense rain. And look, 8:39 p.m. I don't know if the Sugar Land, I don't know if they were about ready to hit the stage or what was going on, but this was not going to miss. And this was going to be bad. This was going to have lightning, was going to have potentially hail, strong winds for sure. Why even mess with it? But anyway, so we zoom in, and keep in mind, right here is the location of the state fair. Now let's look at some weather alerts. So here's 8:39 p.m. 8:39 p.m. A weather alert: severe thunderstorm warning. Once again, a warning means it's observed, it's going to happen. Pay attention to whatever announcements we have. In this case, damaging winds in excess of 60 miles per hour. So that's at 8:39 p.m. So 8:44 p.m. The storm is getting closer. At 8:48, and so once again, by the time that stage collapsed, sorry, by that time that gust front was already well ahead of the cold front. So 8:53 p.m. This is about the time the stage collapsed, and we can see that the location of the cold front was actually way over here on the western part of Marion County. So the rain was actually over here in Eagle Creek. The rain was still 20 miles, 20 minutes away. But the gust front, once again, this was a wind event which knocked down the stage. It wasn't really so much the arrival of the cold front and in a rain event that knocked it down. It was a wind event from that gust front which preceded the cold front. And so that we don't need to see this again, but we know the direction of the gust front. So the direction, this was from the west going to the east, and that's why the stage collapsed that direction. At 8:58 p.m., so just after the stage collapsed, we get this another severe weather statement saying we've got some very destructive winds in excess of 70 miles per hour. And it says, hey, severe thunderstorms will be near you. Indiana State Fairgrounds, about 9:20. So Indiana State Fairgrounds people, you still got 30 minutes. Obviously, they did not. So this is once again where people messed up. They thought, well, the cold front. We'll just wait till the cold front's when the storm's going to arrive, and that's not going to arrive for another 20 minutes. But it was the gust front that preceded the actual arrival of the cold front. And this is what the particular governor at the time. The storm was expected at 9:15, but arrived 30 minutes earlier. Well, the storm arrived. In terms of the cold front arrived on time. It was the gust front that surprised people and which caused the tragedy in which people were unprepared and kind of standing there vulnerable to the stage collapsing.